60 grams of protein a day, 3 meals, 2 shakes, and 12% body fat at age 67. That is not a story I made up. That is what the monks at Drepung Monastery in Lhasa have maintained for 6 centuries on 1 meal a day, no protein powder, no creatine, and no refrigerator. And if your first thought is, that's impossible, I need you to hold that thought. Because the impossibility is not in what they eat. The impossibility is in what we've been told about how muscle works after 60. You have probably spent somewhere between $1,500 and $3,000 this year on whey protein, BCAAs, pre-workout, or meal replacement shakes. All of these are marketed specifically to men over 50 who want to hold on to muscle. I am not guessing that number. The supplement industry pulled $79.78 billion last year from people doing exactly what you're doing. 3 meals, protein every few hours, a shake in the morning, and yet your muscles are still getting smaller. Your grip is still getting weaker. The scale says one thing, but the mirror says another. That's not your failure. That is anabolic resistance, and it is the reason everything you've been doing is working against you. Anabolic resistance is the clinical name for what happens to muscle cells after 60. Your mTOR signaling pathway, the molecular switch that tells a muscle fiber to rebuild after protein intake or exercise, drops to 30 to 40% of its original capacity. You eat 20 grams of protein, and your muscles used to respond. Now they ignore it. You eat another shake at 3 p.m., and there is the same silence. The muscle isn't broken, it has gone deaf. Here is the test. Do this right now. Stand up. Find an open floor space. Lift 1 foot off the ground. Eyes open. No wall. No chair. Start counting. If you can hold that for 10 seconds, you're in range. If you cannot, if your foot comes down before 10 seconds, a 2022 study from the British Journal of Sports Medicine, which tracked 1,702 adults between 51 and 75, found that failure on this exact test was associated with 84% higher all-cause mortality over the next 7 years. That number is not meant to scare you. It is meant to tell you that what we are talking about today, one-leg balance, grip strength, the ability to stand from a chair without using your arms, these are not fitness metrics. They are the biological language of how long you live and how well you function doing it. The monks at Drepung figured this out in 1416. We are only now catching up. Let me tell you exactly what the daily protocol at Drepung looks like. Not the philosophy, the protocol. 4:30 in the morning, before the sun, the monks perform the 5 Tibetan rites, 5 specific exercises, 21 repetitions each, in a fasted state. They have been awake for about 20 minutes, no food, not a single calorie. By 5 a.m., they are moving into 2 hours of prayer, chanting, and prostrations. Full body movements, over 100 repetitions, still fasted. The body is burning stored fat. Autophagy has been running for 10 to 12 hours since the previous evening. At 7 hot a.m., the first intake occurs. It is not food, it is po cha, butter tea, yak butter, salt, fermented tea. Approximately 200 to 300 calories, almost entirely fat. Not a single gram of protein, not a single gram of carbohydrate worth noting. Then nothing until 11:30 a.m., the main meal. Sampa, roasted barley flour, mixed with butter tea into a dense dough. Alongside it, lentils, vegetables, and occasionally meat. In one sitting, 35 to 50 dri of complete protein. After the meal, debate practice. 3 to 4 hours of standing, lunging, clapping, and stomping in the courtyard. Low-intensity resistance movement on top of a full meal. By 5:30 p.m., the kitchen is closed. Light soup or another cup of butter tea, then nothing until the next morning. A 14 to 16-hour fast. Full autophagy activation at hour 14. This is not starvation. This is architecture. Think of your mTOR pathway like a doorbell. When you eat protein, the doorbell rings. In young muscle, the door opens immediately. After 60, the wiring has degraded. The doorbell rings, but nobody answers. You ring it again at noon, and at 3 p.m., and at 7 p.m. 3 times a day, 4 times a day, the doorbell keeps ringing, and the muscle keeps not answering. The monks do something counterintuitive. They stop ringing the doorbell for 16 hours, and when they ring it once at 11:30 a.m. with 45 g of protein, The muscle has been quiet long enough that the wiring has reset. The door opens. A 2013 McMaster University study confirmed exactly this mechanism. After 60, your muscles need 0.4 to 0.6 g of protein per kilogram of body weight per meal to trigger the same synthetic response that 0.24 g per kilogram triggers in a 25-year-old. For a 180 lb man, that means you need 41 g of protein in a single sitting, not spread across 3 meals, for your mTOR pathway to actually respond. 3 meals of 15 g each are ignored. 1 meal of 45 g and the door opens. Here is where anabolic resistance does its real damage. It does not just blunt the protein signal, it prevents the cellular cleanup that makes protein absorption possible in the first place. Your muscle fibers after 60 accumulate damaged proteins, broken cellular machinery that clogs the space where new fibers should grow. This process has a name: autophagy failure. And the modern approach of constant feeding actively suppresses the system designed to clean it up. You are not metabolically broken. You have been given a feeding schedule designed for a 30-year-old and told it would work for a 60-year-old body running on different rules. The fasting window is not the deprivation. The fasting window is the medicine. A 2025 study from Albert Einstein College of Medicine, published in Nature Metabolism, identified the specific mechanism. Chaperone-mediated autophagy, or CMA, is the cellular system responsible for clearing damaged muscle proteins in aging tissue. The researchers found that restoring CMA in aged muscles halted the loss of muscle function, and that fasting and exercise together are the most potent non-genetic activators of the system. Not supplements, not protein timing, but fasting and movement. The monks were doing this 600 years ago. The first element of this protocol is the fasting window itself. This is where most people skip too quickly, looking for the food. But the window is not empty space. It is where the biochemistry begins. Here is what happens inside the fasting window that you cannot replicate with any supplement on the market. Between hours 10 and 14 of a fast, autophagy activates. Your body begins breaking down and recycling damaged proteins, including the damaged contractile proteins inside your muscle fibers that have been accumulating since your mTOR signaling started declining. This is the cellular equivalent of clearing a blocked drain. The protein you eat at hour 16 does not land in a clogged system, it lands in clean tissue. A 2024 study from the University of Pittsburgh, published in Aging Cell, followed 575 older adults with a mean age of 76. They measured the expression of 281 autophagy-related genes and compared it directly to muscle volume, walking speed, leg power, and grip strength. The finding: adults with more active autophagy gene expression retain significantly more thigh muscle volume, more leg power, and stronger grip. Autophagy is not a wellness trend. It is the biological difference between the man who can still get off the floor at 74 and the man who cannot. Now, the wrong version of this. The wrong version is skipping breakfast because you read something about intermittent fasting, then eating a bagel at noon. That is a 14-hour fast followed by 2 g of leucine and a spike of insulin. Autophagy is activated, then immediately terminated. You got none of the downstream benefit. The correct version of the fasting window has a specific structure. It starts the evening before. Your last intake, whether it is bone broth, a light soup, or butter tea, happens by 6 to 9 p.m., not 8 p.m., not after the game, but by 6 p.m. This is the timing the monks follow, and the reason is mechanical. Full autophagy activation requires 14 to 16 hours of fasting for a body over 60. If your last food is at 6 p.m. and your main meal is at noon the next day, you have an 18-hour window. That is 2 to 4 hours inside the zone where muscle protein degradation reverses. If your last food is at 9 p.m., your noon meal gives you 15 hours. You are just barely at the threshold. 1 hour matters here. The difference between a 15-hour window and a 13-hour window is the difference between autophagy that runs long enough to clear damaged proteins and autophagy that starts but does not finish. What do you drink during the window? The monks drink butter tea, pocha, which contains fat but no protein and no carbohydrate spikes. The fat does not break autophagy. The fat maintains metabolic calm without triggering mTOR or insulin. In a Western adaptation, 1 TBSP of grass-fed butter in black coffee or plain tea, no sweetener, no milk, and nothing else until your main meal. Here is what you will notice in days 1 through 7 with the window alone before anything else changes. Days 1 through 3, hunger arrives around what used to be breakfast time. This is ghrelin, the hunger hormone operating on its train schedule. It peaks and passes within 20 minutes if you do not feed it. Sparkling water at that time helps. The hunger is real. It is also temporary. Day 4, the peak does not come as hard. Day 5, some mornings you forget it was ever there. By day 7, most men report that their afternoon energy, specifically the 2 to 1 p.m. crash that hits after lunch, has either reduced significantly or disappeared. This is the first signal that your blood sugar regulation is beginning to stabilize. Not because you are eating less, but because you have stopped cycling insulin 4 times a day. Anabolic resistance does something that most people do not connect. It makes you more insulin resistant as well. Every time insulin spikes, every meal, every snack, every shake, it temporarily suppresses the autophagy that your aging muscle tissue desperately needs. The 3-meal approach does not just fail to build muscle, it actively prevents the cellular cleanup that would make building muscle possible. The window breaks that cycle. That is the first element. But the window creates the conditions. It does not deliver the signal. For the signal, you need the meal itself. The second element is the composition of the single protein-dense meal. And this is where the detail matters more than almost anywhere else in this protocol. The mistake most men make when they hear one big meal is they think one big dinner. They have been restricting all day. They are hungry. And by 7 p.m., they eat whatever is available, often processed, often high in refined carbohydrate, and rarely structured for amino acid density. That is not the monk's meal. The monk's meal is an engineered event. Here is the specific limit of the fasting window alone. Autophagy clears the damaged proteins, resets mTOR sensitivity, and opens the door. But for the muscle to actually rebuild, you need to walk through it. You need to deliver enough leucine, the specific branch-chain amino acid that directly triggers mTOR in a single sitting above the threshold that aging muscle requires. That threshold after 60 is approximately 3.0 to 3.5 g of leucine per meal delivered together, not spread across hours. Below that threshold, mTOR activates partially. Above it, you get a full synthetic response. The food. The monk's primary protein source is sampa, roasted barley flour, combined with lentils and whatever animal protein is available, typically in the form of dried yak meat or eggs. In the Western adaptation, you do not need barley flour and dried yak. You need the amino acid profile that produces the same leucine load. The correct form, 180 to 200 grain of cooked salmon, not canned salmon in water, which has been processed to about 60% of its original amino acid content. Actual cooked salmon fillet, or 3 whole eggs combined with 150 grams of cottage cheese. Full fat, not low fat, because the fat slows gastric emptying and extends the absorption window, which matters at 60 because your digestive enzymes are slower, or 200 grams of cooked lentils paired with 2 whole eggs and 30 grams of hard cheese. Each of these combinations delivers between 40 and 55 grams of complete protein with a leucine content at or above 3 g. The wrong form, whey protein isolate. I know that sounds counterintuitive. Whey is high in leucine, but there is a specific problem. Whey is absorbed in approximately 45 minutes. It produces a rapid spike in plasma amino acids and an equally rapid decline. For a 25-year-old with fast mTOR signaling, that spike is enough. For a 60-year-old with blunted signaling, the mTOR response has not fully activated by the time plasma amino acids are already falling. You get a partial signal that declines before it completes. This is documented. A 2023 review in Nutrition Reviews found that older adults require slower digesting protein sources for equivalent muscle protein synthetic response. Whole food protein, not isolate. Timing. The meal happens at the end of the fasting window, not at the beginning. Not at 9 a.m. because you got hungry. At noon or 11:30 after 17 to 18 hours of fasting. The delay is not arbitrary. The longer the fasting window runs into the autophagy active zone, the more mTOR sensitivity is restored before the protein arrives. Preparation matters. Cooked protein digests more completely than raw. The cooking process partially denatures the protein structure, making it more accessible to your digestive enzymes, which at 60 are producing at roughly 70% of their peak output. Raw egg whites contain avidin, which binds biotin and reduces absorption. Cooked eggs result in 91% protein absorption, while raw eggs result in only 51%. Add to the meal 150 to 200 grams of cooked complex carbohydrate, oats, barley, sweet potato, or lentils. Not bread, not rice at scale. The complex carbohydrate produces a controlled insulin release that serves one specific function. It activates the insulin-mediated component of Manhor signaling. Protein alone activates one arm. Protein plus controlled carbohydrate activates both arms simultaneously. The monks eat sampa, dense barley dough, with every protein meal. This is not cultural habit. It is biochemistry they stumbled into through centuries of observation. And one fermented food, 2 TBSP of plain full-fat yogurt or kontanrin, 1 TBSP of miso paste stirred into warm water, not boiling because above 60 degrees C you kill the active cultures, or 60 G of kimchi. The fermented component restores the gut microbiome diversity that is essential for amino acid absorption. After 60, gut permeability increases and microbiome diversity decreases. Fermented food directly addresses the absorption problem that makes high-protein meals less effective in older adults. Without it, 15 to 20% of the protein you eat passes without being absorbed. What you notice when the meal is structured correctly. Within days 3 through 5, you feel a different quality of satiation after eating. Not just full, but settled. The craving cycle that normally starts 2 hours after a meal does not arrive. Your body has received a signal large enough to register. The villain, anabolic resistance, has a specific response to this meal format. The fasting window reset, mTOR sensitivity. The single large protein dose crosses the threshold that 3 small meals could never reach individually. The combination produces what researchers call anabolic priming, a state where muscle protein synthesis remains elevated for 5 to 8 hours post-meal compared to 1 to 2 hours after a smaller conventional meal. But there is a third element, and without it, the fasting window in the meal cannot hold. This is where the monks had an advantage we need to consciously replicate. Stop for a moment. I want to tell you about Robert Kessler. Robert was 63 years old, a retired firefighter from Akron, Ohio. 32 years of carrying 60 elabirai of gear up staircases in burning buildings. A grip that could bend things other men could not move. He could carry a 200 lb man down 12 flights. He retired at 58. By 60, he could not open a pickle jar. By 62, he felt getting out of the shower. His legs simply gave out. The doctor said, sarcopenia, muscle wasting, as if it was weather, as if it just happened. Robert was doing everything right by conventional standards. 3 meals a day, whey protein in the morning, physical therapy exercises 3 times a week. He was disciplined. He was consistent. His muscles were ignoring all of it. Every gram of protein he consumed was being oxidized for energy, not built into fiber. His mTOR pathway had gone quiet. His autophagy was suppressed by constant feeding, so the damaged proteins inside his muscle cells were never cleared. He was delivering building materials to a construction site that was too cluttered to build anything. At 63, his one-leg stand was 4 seconds, chair rises in 30 seconds, 8. Grip strength at the 15th percentile for his age. His body was accelerating toward dependence, the kind of dependence where you stop living in your own home. His muscles were not dying of starvation, they were dying of noise. The constant feeding schedule designed for a young athlete sold to a man in his 60s was suppressing the very biological process that would have let those muscles rebuild. A 16-hour fasting window, a single structured meal, and fasted movement in the morning would have restored mTOR sensitivity, cleared the protein debris, and let his muscles finally hear the signal that had been ringing for years. That is what anabolic resistance does when it goes untreated. Not slowly, but quickly. The difference between 58 and 63 for Robert was 5 years and the wrong information. The men who do not end up like Robert are not genetically luckier. They eat differently. Now, everything I just walked you through, the 16-hour fasting window, the single protein-dense meal, The butter tea protocol, the timing, the fermented food, the leucine threshold. That is one chapter of a larger system. It is called the Western Monk Protocol. It is a 124-page guide. It covers the complete system, the full Tibetan meal composition with exact macros, the progressive 5 rites calendar for 90 days, 4 additional monastic movement practices, the sleep protocol, the breathing techniques, and the specific blood markers to test for anabolic resistance reversal. IGF-1, testosterone, CRP, albumin. Week by week, day by day. 7 monks' meal recipes with full shopping lists under $60 a month. A printable tracker. It is a PDF. You download it instantly. Works on your phone, your tablet, your computer. If you are watching this on your TV right now, there is a QR code on screen. Scan it with your phone. You will have the full protocol in your hands in 60 seconds. If you are watching on your phone or computer, the link is in the description below this video. Now the third element. The third element is fasted movement. This is what completes the system, and without it, the first 2 elements produce partial results. Here is what the window and the meal cannot do on their own. Autophagy clears damaged proteins. The single meal delivers the leucine signal. But the muscle fibers, particularly the type 2 fast-twitch fibers that are most vulnerable to age-related atrophy, require a mechanical stimulus to direct where the protein goes. Protein synthesis without mechanical demand does not build contractile tissue. It maintains existing tissue at best. The monks move for 2 to 4 hours before their first food, and again for 3 to 4 hours after the main meal. That movement is not exercise in the modern sense. It is a continuous low-intensity mechanical signal telling the muscle exactly where to send the protein. The specific practice at Drepung is what they call Lujong, wind meditation movement, combined with the 5 Tibetan rites performed at 4:30 in the morning in a fasted state. Here is the Western adaptation for the fasted movement element. You do not need to wake at 4:30. The timing is flexible within a range. The principle is not flexible. The movement must happen in the fasted state before any caloric intake. Between waking and your butter coffee or butter tea, perform the following. The modified 5 Tibetan rites. If you are in weeks 1 and 2, 7 repetitions of each. If you are in weeks 3 and 4, 14 repetitions with a 5-second isometric hold at the peak of each movement. By months 2 and 3, 21 repetitions with 5-second holds. After the rites, a 20 to 30-minute walk. Not a run, not a gym session, but a walk at a pace where you can hold a conversation but feel a slight elevation in breath. This activates AMPK, the cellular energy sensor that signals autophagy and fat oxidation, without producing the cortisol spike that high-intensity fasted exercise generates. High-intensity fasted exercise in men over 60 produces a cortisol spike that partially suppresses mTOR signaling for 2 to 4 hours post-exercise. The monks do not sprint, they walk. After your main meal, this is the element most people leave out. 20 to 40 minutes of low-intensity movement within 90 minutes of finishing eating. This is the debate practice equivalent. Standing, mild walking, bodyweight squats, or wall sits. This post-meal movement does 2 things. It clears blood glucose before it can spike dramatically, which prevents the insulin surge that would terminate the anabolic window. And it drives blood flow to muscle tissue precisely when peak plasma amino acids are circulating, the 60 to 90-minute window after the meal when leucine concentration in the blood is highest. A 2016 study from the University of Padova followed 20 elderly adults through a 12-week resistance training program and measured autophagy markers directly. Training significantly increased Beclin-1, a primary autophagy marker, in muscle tissue. More importantly, exercise combined with fasting produced a synergistic autophagy response that neither produced alone. The monks did both every day. Here is the complete daily system. Write this down. 6 a.m. Wake. Warm water with a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. This replaces electrolytes without breaking the fast and prevents the morning dizziness that some men experience in weeks 1 and 2. 6:15 a.m. 5 Tibetan rites. 7 repetitions to start, progressing to 21 over 90 days. 6:45 a.m. 20 to 30-minute fasted walk. 7:30 a.m. butter coffee or butter tea. 1 tablespoon of grass-fed butter in black coffee or plain tea. No milk, no sweetener. Stir until dissolved. 12 p.m., the meal. 40 to 55 g of complete protein. Salmon, eggs plus cottage cheese, or lentils plus eggs plus hard cheese. 150 to 200 gram of complex carbohydrate. Oats, sweet potato, or barley. 2 tablespoons of full-fat plain yogurt, or 1 tablespoon of miso stirred into warm water. Eat slowly. Minimum 20 minutes for the meal. 1 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. 20 minutes of light movement. A walk, body weight squats, wall sits. This is non-negotiable for the system to function. 6 to 1 p.m. Final intake. Bone broth, 1 cup, 300 milliliters. Ideally slow cooked with marrow or butter tea. This provides glycine and collagen precursors without breaking the fast architecture for the next morning. Nothing after this. The monthly cost of this protocol is approximately $55 to $70 depending on your protein sources. Compare that to the $160 to $250 per month that most men in this audience currently spend on protein powder, BCAAs, and supplements. The reason the complete system produces results that the parts do not. The fasting window restores the receiver. The meal transmits the signal at full strength. The fasted movement directs where the signal lands. Remove any one of the three and you have a partial circuit. All three together and you have the complete loop that the monks at Drepung have been running for 600 years. There are 3 problems that come up consistently in the first 2 to 4 weeks. Let me give you the exact correction for each. Problem 1, extreme hunger in days 1 through 5, arriving around what used to be breakfast time. The diagnosis is ghrelin habituation. Your hunger hormone has been trained to spike at a specific clock time, and it is spiking on schedule even though the meal is no longer coming. Add 1 extra tablespoon of butter to your morning tea. The additional fat, approximately 100 to 120 calories, extends satiation without triggering mTOR or insulin. Have sparkling water at the old breakfast time. The carbonation provides a brief gastric distension that reduces the ghrelin signal. This adapts fully in 5 to 7 days. If it does not, add a small handful of raw walnuts, about 30 gr, at the old breakfast time during weeks 1 and 2 only. Problem 2, muscle cramping during the 5 rites, particularly in the calves and feet. The diagnosis is electrolyte depletion. A fasting protocol significantly reduces the sodium, potassium, and magnesium that a normal eating schedule replenishes throughout the day. Add a 1/4 teaspoon of good salt to your morning water, the salt mentioned in the daily system. Add 400 mg of magnesium glycinate before bed, not magnesium oxide, which has poor absorption, specifically glycinate. Add potassium-rich foods to the main meal, half an avocado, sweet potato, or 150 growth of spinach. Cramping resolves in 48 hours with this correction. Problem 3, dizziness during the spinning movements in the rites or upon standing from the chair rise test. The diagnosis is orthostatic adaptation. Your cardiovascular system is adjusting to the lower blood volume and blood pressure patterns of a longer fasting state. Reduce the spinning movement in the rites to 3 to 5 repetitions until week 3. Always rise from seated position slowly. Pause at the edge of the chair for 2 seconds before fully standing. Hydrate at least 64 Oz, approximately 2 L of water throughout the day. If dizziness persists past week 2, add the small handful of walnuts at 3 p.m. as a second anchor point. If it persists past week 3, consult your physician. This is the point where something beyond adaptation may be happening. Now, the honest timeline. I am not going to promise you 90 days in a new body. Here is what actually happens, checkpoint by checkpoint. Days 1 through 3, you are managing ghrelin. Energy may feel slightly lower than usual, particularly in the afternoon. This is normal. Your body is switching fuel sources. 72 hours in, notice your afternoon energy, specifically whether the post-lunch crash arrives. Many men find it has softened or disappeared. This is the first measurable signal that blood sugar regulation is stabilizing. After your second week, retest the single leg stand you did at the beginning of this video. Not because structural muscle has changed, it has not yet, but because balance and proprioception improve rapidly with the fasted morning movement. Men who could hold for 4 seconds at the start frequently reach 8 to 12 seconds by week 2. The mTOR pathway has not rebuilt muscle yet, but the nervous system is already recalibrating. Day 30, the 30-second chair rise. Retest it. If you are executing the protocol fully, fasting window, structured meal, fasted morning movement, post-meal walk, most men add 2 to 4 repetitions to their baseline. This is type 1 muscle fiber response time. Type 2 fiber adaptation, the fast twitch fibers most affected by sarcopenia, takes longer. Day 60 to 90, this is where the structural changes become measurable. Grip strength, which the Lancet study identified as a stronger predictor of mortality than blood pressure, begins responding to the combined fasting and movement protocol at the 8 to 12-week mark. Men who started at the 15th percentile for their age group have moved to the 30th to 45th percentile in that window. Thigh circumference is measurable by a Taylor's tape. The morning stiffness that takes 20 minutes to clear when you first get out of bed begins to clear in 5. Be honest with yourself about what changes in week 1 and what changes in month 3. The energy and digestion shift quickly. The muscle does not. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. Here is the system in plain language. You close the kitchen at 6 p.m., you sleep. You wake and move before any food touches your stomach. You drink butter in your coffee or tea. At noon, you eat one real meal, enough protein to cross the threshold that your mTOR pathway requires, enough carbohydrate to activate both arms of the signal, and enough fermented food to ensure what you eat is actually absorbed. You take a 20-minute walk within the hour. At 6 p.m., you close the kitchen again. That is the full loop, 6 centuries old, under $70 a month. Tonight, set a phone alarm for 6 p.m. and label it kitchen closed. That is the one change that starts everything else, not the meal, not the rites, the close. Tomorrow morning, before your coffee, before your phone, before anything, stand on one leg. Count. Remember the number. Write it down somewhere. You will not lose it. That is your baseline. That is the number you are working with. One morning, and I mean this specifically, do not start with a 16-hour window and the 5 rites simultaneously in week 1. The fasting adaptation and the movement adaptation are both physiologically real, and stacking them both at full intensity. In week 1 will produce the cramping, dizziness, and fatigue that makes people quit by day 5. Start with the window. Add the rites in week 2, add the post-meal walk in week 3. The monks did not learn the full practice in 3 days. They had months of gradual initiation. Respect the architecture. Anabolic resistance told Robert Kessler's muscles to go quiet. It told him the signal was not worth answering. A man who spent 32 years carrying other men's bodies up burning staircases could not open a jar by 60, not because his body had failed him, but because he had been given the wrong instructions for the machine he was running at 60. Your muscles are not going quiet because you are old. They are going quiet because nobody told you the door needed to be left closed for 16 hours before you knocked. Now you know, if this story changed how you look at the potential of your own body and the hidden strength within, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the biological truths that have been overlooked for far too long. Let's build a stronger future together. The next chapter of your transformation is just beginning.